1,991 delegates are needed to win the Democratic nomination outright. Currently, Bernie Sanders leads with 56, Joe Biden has 48, and former candidate Pete Buttigieg had the third most with 26.
Sanders' lead has, of course, caused the establishment to enter red alert mode. Some superdelegates have threatened to, quote, risk party damage in order to prevent a Sanders win. Joining us now to discuss this is Nomiki Konst. She's the part of the Unity Reform Commission that reformed the redefine the DNC's rules after the 2016 election, and host of the Nomiki Konst Show, which we all encourage you to subscribe to.
That's right.
Welcome
Go
to
sub. Smash subscribe, guys. Nomi's killing it over there.
Yeah. Okay, Nomiki, so there's a lot of discussion today, especially with Pete Buttigieg dropping out of the race. Joe Biden seems to be doing much better, after he won the South Carolina primary by almost 30 points, almost guaranteeing a broker convention. What should people be on the most lookout for whenever it comes to the convention, and how these rules will go, especially on the second ballot in a no majority situation?
I'm not sold on the brokered convention idea. Call me crazy, but I still think that we're very likely to go into a convention that's decided. Maybe I'm an optimist, but I think that, we're used to dealing with the DNC that may have had in the past nefarious intentions, and there may be a good chunk of actors who do have nefarious intentions about keeping control and keeping Bernie out of it. But, the signaling from Nancy Pelosi last week, in which she said this would be really bad for the party, and frankly, it'd be really bad for her. I mean, she has to keep her house in order. She won the House back, and just like Mitch McConnell had to start to, toe the party line of Donald Trump's, I think Nancy Pelosi is seeing the writing on the wall, and that she needs to keep her house together. And having a brokered convention would not be good for the elections beyond Trump, but those local elections and down ballot elections. So if Bernie Sanders has a plurality, I'm still in the camp of it's not going to become brokered. And I still believe that he could get to 1991 because of momentum. But in terms at the convention itself, it's a little confusing. I mean, there are standing committees that are partly appointed. You saw some of those lists go out of Tom Perez's appointees. He has these slate appointments, which are technically Democratic, but really he puts forward the names that he wants on these lists. And then what happens is they're expanded to reflect the delegate count of the candidates. So in 2016, you had a credentials committee, you had a platform committee, which I was on, and you had a rules committee. And the membership of those committees was made up of the percentage of delegates that Hillary Clinton got and Bernie Sanders got. So if Joe Biden is able to capture, say, 36% of the vote, and Bernie gets over 40%, Joe Biden now has 36% of the delegates that can be appointed to the Rules Committee at the convention, which, not to be confused, is different from the DNC's regular Rules Committee, the full-time Rules Committee. So that's where you might see some reinterpretation of how the convention procedures go down, partly because we have never been in this specific situation. We've been in a brokered convention. Technically, 2016 would have been a brokered convention if Bernie Sanders hadn't given his pledged delegates to Hillary Clinton, and then as a result got the Unity Reform Commission.
So
Sorry, guys.
No. Just let's drill down into that. The Rules Committee that would have, if we're in the scenario where Bernie wins a plurality and Biden is the next closest, but nobody has an outright majority, and so Bernie has, the most delegates on the Rules Committee, what types of changes could they make? How does that look in practice?
I mean, this is the area where nobody really knows. And the secrets of the DNC are that, as my dear friend Dr. Jim Zogby, who served on the Unity Reform Commission, he likes to say, that the DNC up until 2016 was a show. You'd show up and you were basically part of the theater of the DNC. There was an illusion of democracy, but there wasn't actually real debate and deliberation and rules changes happening. This time around, I don't think that the Sanders campaign, or frankly the Biden campaign, if he's that close, are going to let that happen. It won't be happening behind closed doors, which is basically what happened in the past. So I think that you'll see the Bernie campaign fighting harder to eliminate superdelegates on the second ballot, especially if that margin is larger than you can imagine the plurality is much larger. Say he gets very close to 91.
Let me understand this then. So it's not a guarantee that there are superdelegates on the second ballot. That is decided at the Rules Commission. So
No.
I'm just trying to understand, because as I had understood it, is that was already laid out that there are superdelegates. So they could be ruled out on the second ballot, is what you're saying, as a result of representation.
I am saying that, when the Rules Committee meets at the convention, anything can happen. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
There's a set of rules that we spent over 2 years deliberating. The Unity Reform Commission, which the Bernie Sanders delegation, I want to make this very clear, was in the minority. Hillary Clinton had the majority of members and Tom Perez had 3. And we deliberated many things, the internal workings of the party, caucuses, primaries, and we had a mandate to reduce superdelegates. We went beyond that. The Sanders people, as consistently said on the record from 2015 and beyond, wanted to eliminate superdelegates. And, we didn't win that fight. So I think at the convention, if Bernie does have more delegates, which I assume is going to happen, this is where the complications of having a stacked Rules Committee of appointees of Tom Perez. When you looked at that Rules Committee, Tom Perez's Rules Committee that he appointed, those are just part of the Rules Committee. That's going to add to whatever Joe Biden's establishment Rules Committee is. So
Got it.
Even if Bernie's in the majority, he's in the minority again when it comes to these committees.
Gotcha. All right, so let's talk about this sort of like Super Friends idea. I mean, my commentary today is about, it looks like Elizabeth Warren's whole play here, like she doesn't look slated to win a single state, including her own home state of Massachusetts. Her whole goal is to keep Bernie below a majority so that she can potentially play kingmaker for a Joe Biden on that first ballot, putting her delegates with his delegates. Maybe you bring in Pete's delegates or whoever else to hopefully put him over the majority. How does that work in practice on the floor? Is that a realistic expectation?
I think it'll be absolute chaos. And they will try to brand this as some sort of safe bet through the coronavirus. You started to hear this the other day when there was more conversation of the coronavirus. You saw Biden surrogates on TV talking about how you need a tested politician, a tested statesman to move us through this time, to go up against Trump. And I think that Warren is going to make that case as the, quote, unity candidate who is bringing the progressives and the centrist status quo together. I still think it's going to be chaos. I just, they know that the Bernie people are loyal and that, it's working people. These are working people across the country who took time out of their days to go and volunteer and donate money and knock on doors and show up at poll sites and caucus sites. So, just like 2016, it's the DNC being very out of touch with what their movement, the Democratic Party's movement, is calling for. So I think it's going to be extremely messy. 2016 was ungodly. It didn't appear that way on television because the Democratic National Committee is very good at staging things and making sure that the camera shots are focused on delegations that are not unruly, that they've got the right surrogates on TV. But on that convention floor, you had people protesting, including myself. You had people walking out, signs being ripped out of the hands of 85-year-old union members. That's what was happening on the floor, and social media really gave access to that. This time around, expect that, and even more so, because let's not forget, even if Bernie is in the majority, even if he gets to 1991, frankly, the Democratic National Committee controls the convention, and as a result, they control the staging. So I do think it'll be chaotic. I think a lot of the negotiating is going to happen in the back rooms like last time, through the Rules Committee membership, with the senior staffers. And, I've said this really for the last several months, that every person in this race that is not Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders, including Michael Bloomberg, is a mercenary. And they're there for some political goal. I don't think Bloomberg's goal is to minimize Bernie's power, but I think that Pete Buttigieg has proved that. And Elizabeth Warren, I don't know what her progressive base is at this point. So moving forward, unless she's the vice presidential pick, I don't see what is worth for her, what is worth it to her for her to really put her middle finger up to the progressive movement that got her elected.
Yeah. Well, so Nomi, just to be clear, you're saying if Bernie has the plurality but not a majority, and Biden is, not too far behind, it's not going to be as simple as just like, okay, well, let's add up Biden plus Warren plus Pete, and there you go. You're saying it's going to be a lot messier than that in practice.
Yeah, and on the second ballot, let's not forget that all of the delegates that are pledged, the ones that were there as a result of democracy, they are now free to do what they want, including Bernie's delegates. I don't think that Bernie's delegates are going to move away, but you might see some delegates of Biden's or Warren's or Pete's say, you know what, this isn't worth it. And that's why it's really important that the Sanders campaign has a tight operation when it comes to the DNC, that folks who've had a relationship with DNC members, local party officials, people who are elected as delegates, can call those people up and say, we need to keep this party together, and another messy convention is only going to deliver us Trump. And, from my perspective right now, I don't think Biden's going to get to that point. He had a great day in South Carolina, and his polls are looking a little bit better. But at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders still crushes Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders still doesn't have, a corruption scandal behind him. Bernie Sanders doesn't have the status quo behind him. Bernie Sanders is running around the country giving rallies like the one I went to last night with 30,000 people. And Joe Biden can't be on stage for longer than a minute and a half without forgetting what he was going to say. That's not good against Trump. And the sooner we have Bernie Sanders out there fighting for working people with a diametrically opposite message than Donald Trump, the better it is for the party to stay together. So I think that we can win some of those delegates over. And I'm gonna counter the point that the New York Times made about the superdelegates, because as somebody who actually had to make these phone calls to the superdelegates, many of these superdelegates, when we were fighting for the Unity Reform Commission, I think that those numbers were wrong. I think many superdelegates have endorsed Bernie Sanders, actually, are on the Bernie campaign, and supported Keith Ellison as well. So I bet you'll see some of these superdelegates move towards Bernie's side. But again, it is going to be messy if they decide to make this play.
It's going to be interesting.
Very interesting to have your insights, Nomi. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
See you.
Coming up, Team Rising's thoughts on the South Carolina primary. That one, Rising continues.